these virtual sessions are, how effective they are, what's happening. Uh, so we'll see. Do we need to continue? Yay. Some people like to come in last minute. All right, it's 6:30. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening here in San Diego, and also good morning. At least we have one person from Philippines who logged in. I hope you're doing well, staying safe, especially as the pandemic seems like it keeps getting worse and worse. As you might have seen here in US, we keep increasing our numbers. India was also on really going up as far as numbers today. Hopefully it doesn't get too bad. We'll just have to see what's happening. All right, so today's session is about credit, credit report, credit score, and credit cards. Some of it only pertains to our particular credit system here in US, but then there's some information that's generic that can be used outside of US. A quick review of what we did on Wednesday, which was the foundation of our credit system. We did our responsibility and accountability. We talked about our responsibility to ourselves, to our family, and then also thinking about those that are less fortunate in our neighborhood, in our country, and eventually the entire world. Because life is not just about us. We need to also be concerned with everyone in the world. Then we moved on to accountability, which is a step higher than being responsible. We are accountable when people don't have to constantly monitor our work, don't have to supervise. We take on a task, either we take it on ourselves or something that's assigned to us, and then we drive it to completion to the best ability that we have. So that was accountability. And then we ended in the last part, we looked at borrowing. And that's where we kind of go over to the credit. Many societies throughout the world, borrowing has become an essential part of life, or credit has become an essential part of life. We cannot, here in US, it's impossible to do many things that we don't see what's happening in the background without actually have a credit. So it's very important for us not only to build credit, but also to maintain it, to improve it, and constantly monitor it. So that's where we left off on Wednesday. Today, Ms. Hazel Robinson will be leading us into the credit system. So, Ms. Hazel, it's all yours.
Yes, good afternoon, well, wherever we are. Hello to everyone. And I want to start with just one question, because we're going to be talking about credit and credit cards. But I just want to find out, and you can answer in the chat, if all of you know your credit score. Because your credit score all the time has to do a lot of times with the best credit cards that you can get. So, do you know your credit score? And when you look at our credit cards, you want to look at them as to what's the best one for me? What is that I'm looking for when it comes to credit cards? Okay.
So before we continue, the lesson that we are carrying out today, there is nothing really for it in the online workbook. Most of the information are here in the ABCs of Wealth advanced level, and then also the supplement, the US supplement. The information that we're sharing, that's where you can find it. Go ahead. Should I pull up? Are we ready for?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, so So this is starting from our at the ABCs of Wealth advanced level.
And when we're talking about credit cards and credit, when you borrow money, as we talked about before, you want to make sure that you pay back because that's determining how reliable you are. And that is what your credit scores are based on a lot of times. Who's looking at your credit and how has it built up over time in terms of, how well that you take care of it, how well were you at paying your bills and paying them on time. And that's how reliable you are. And that will determine how many offers or what kind of offers you may get. And it also will determine also the interest that you have to pay. So the people that might look at your credit or lenders, if you're buying a house or a car or whatever, then someone is looking at your credit and they will ask if they can pull your credit. And a lot of times they are looking at what kind of credit score that you might have, and also whether those types of loan that you had before, whether you were reliable in paying those back. And the second thing is how to build your credit. A lot of times we just think we have to start out with a lot of credit cards or whatever, but we can start small. And then how you build it up is if you start small, then just pay on time for whatever that particular item is. And each time that you pay in and all of the small time credits that you might have, then you want to make sure that you're taking care of those. Types and sources of credit. It could be department store is one way of starting out, and that's kind of be revolving credit, but you pay for that one time. And your credit history, as I said before, is how you will determine whether you can get store credit or different types of credit. Everything will depend on what you've done before and how you want to start out and how you use your credit in terms of that borrowing that you've done. But you can, as you borrow and pay reliably, you can continue to have more negotiating power. And I say that because a lot of times I have a credit card and I can call them up and say, you know what, I need you to lower my credit, my interest rate because it's too high and I need you to see if you can do something about it. But unless you're the type of person that has been paying your cards off, then the more you do that, the more you have the power to negotiate. And our local credit system, that is one thing that I think is 3 credit.
Ms. Hazel, before we go forward with local, let's have a little bit of discussion here.
Okay, sure.
So I have a couple of questions. Here it says who might be looking at our credit. It says lenders. That is totally understood because we're actually borrowing money to buy a home, to buy a car, student, and so forth. But why would landlords or employers or insurers might be interested? Why would they be interested in our, because we're not borrowing anything from them, why would they be interested in our credit? Actually, Ms. Hazel, I'm asking you.
I'm sorry. They would be interested because they are looking at that because if they rent to you, then they want to know, can you afford it? And will you be able to pay your rent on time? By looking at your credit, your past things that you've done, were you reliable in doing those things? And that's why they're looking at it because they know they are entering a contract with you in terms of your renting. Then they want to know whether you'll be able to pay it or not.
Exactly. And it same goes with employers. Not many employers do it, but they do have the rights to do it. Because when they want to hire an employee, they want to see if that employee is reliable. Our credit score, as we will see, 35% of our credit score is our characteristics of punctuality. So that tells the employers, a potential employer, whether this person is going to come to work on time or not, or they have to worry whether this person will complete their jobs or not. Insurance companies is the same way because they are insuring our cars. They want to know the more responsible we are, the lower chances that we might get into an accident and would be asking them for money. So that's why it's important for all of these. There are several other places that I can think of. Uh, Again, here in US, when we apply to get, when we want to get a set mobile phone, a new number, they also check our credit score because that tells them, again, are we going to be reliable to pay their monthly fees or not? So those are the things that really kind of think about. On the types of credit and sources of credit, here in the US, the single payment credit very much does not exist anymore. This used to be American Express. American Express before, uh, every time, every month, whatever you borrowed, you would have to pay the whole thing back. But then I don't know exactly when they changed it. So that single payment does not really exist. Installment is basically when we borrow money from a lender and then we pay it back on regular basis, usually on monthly, a fixed amount, which does not change. And then once we pay that amount back, we cannot borrow against it uh, through that same loan. So for example, when we buy a house or when we buy a car, the lender gives us certain amount of money and then we're supposed to pay it back every month, as opposed to revolving, which are types of loans that we continually borrow and pay back, borrow and pay back. Credit card is a perfect example. And then there is a type of loan that can be secured against the house. It's called a line of credit. That one also is a revolving credit as well. So those are the different types of um, credit that's being considered. There's also here in our economy, uh, home loans are considered a complete difference. So mortgages are listed, as we will see, are listed a different category. So in order for us to have a high credit score, uh, we will need to use all of these, the installment, revolving, and mortgage. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to, but it helps us to bring um, the credit up. Let's see. How to use borrow
And,
negotiate. All
and
right.
then Alex, I want to mention one other one where you have a card and you can have it for same as cash if you pay it back within a certain period of time, like 6 months or a year or whatever, depending on how much you borrow. If you pay it back under those circumstances, then you will use it the same as cash.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So let's dive into, if you have any questions so far about what we've shared, please put it in the chat. If not, we're going to go into how the US-based credit report and credit system is, which again, it's common as we learned. I know that it's the same in Canada. Canada also uses the same system. At least United Kingdom also uses part of the system. It looks very different. Last month we worked with a family in London, and they were using fairly the same system. So, Miss Hazel, it's all yours again.
Okay. And as Alex said, in the US, we have three that we use: Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And they keep track of how reliable you've been from the first day that you start credit. And if whatever you decided to do, they will keep track of how well you paid, whether it went into default or not, or whatever, but they keep track of everything, those three agencies. Uh, and your credit report, like I said, is really important. It will determine what kind of credit score that you have. So you want to make sure that you pay your bills on time. And I just want to mention something. Some credit cards will have uh, the minimum amount you can pay. I would say that if you can pay more, then do that. Don't pay the minimum amount, because a lot of times all that is doing is just paying off your interest rate. So as much as possible, try to pay more, but as but never don't pay, because that will affect your credit score.
So there's a question from Mujdan here. From what I understand, she's asking if we have a good credit score and ask to lower the rate, and if they don't, is it fine to close the credit card? Uh,
I
mm,
wouldn't close it. I would just stop using it. But sometimes if you close them up, that will affect your credit. But a lot of times that's part of your credit history. As long as you have paid that and been reliable in paying it, I would caution you not to close it right away. I don't know about you, Alex.
we'll get more into it as we get into the credit score and how it's calculated. I think we can explain this a little further. So yeah, that is. So let's continue, but then we'll come back to this question as well.
Okay. All right. And it just goes on to say what's in it. Although different agencies have different way of reporting your credit history, follow the following information normally listed. Okay. Okay. Of course, it's got your personal information, your name, and your social security number, your date of birth. So all of those are the personal items that's in it. And adverse accounts contain information that some creditors may consider to be adverse. Adverse accounts information may generally be reported for 7 years from the date of the first delinquency, depending on your state of residence. Now, satisfactory accounts in good standing. Okay, so that's why I say you should always pay regardless. If you don't have a lot to pay on it, you pay the minimum amount, but as you get better, I would caution you to pay more if you can. That's why I asked at the beginning, how many credit cards do you have and how many do you think you should have? But goes on to say the account information, your account number, whatever company you had who issued the card to you, and how much the loan type, and whether it's a credit card or whether it's automobile or whether it's mortgage or real estate. That's basically your mortgage. And so they're keeping track of all of these things in terms of how much you borrowed and how was your paying. What is your paying record? Was it anything that was past due when you opened it and the date that it was closed? Okay.
So let's go back a little bit here. The way the reporting happens to these three credit agencies is that the financial institutions that we work with, they send the information to these three credit agencies. So for example, if I have a credit card with Bank of America, one of our large banks here, every month they send all the information, the current balance, what is the total available credit on that particular credit card, whether I have missed any payment or not. So they are the ones that send that information to these different credit agencies. But because of the timing, sometimes we will see that there is a bit of a difference in the credit score. Even though that credit score, everyone uses the same formula, which nobody knows what it is, as far as I know, but you would see a little different. And one of the things that's really important to make sure that we look at all three of them is to make sure that there is nothing in there that does not belong to us. I've always been wondering, how could someone's information end up in another person's credit report? The answer has always been that, well, similarity in name, which still to me does not make sense, because all of us here, each one of us here in the US have only one social security number, and everything should be based on that. But obviously, the more common our name is, the higher chance of other people's account information will get into our credit report. I hope someday they will fix it so we will not have this problem.
But what I found out, they put it back on the consumer to fix it. unfortunately, but that happened to me and my two children because I think I shared that with you, Alex. Because when they were born, I had to get Social Security numbers for them,
Mm-hmm.
and their numbers are only one, like one number off, and sometimes they get them confused between my son and my daughter. But anyway, but in order for to fix it or something comes up, then you have to be the one to fix it.
So
That's
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 why
been
it's,
my experience.
yeah, that's why it's so important for us to at least once a year look at all three of these to make sure that everything is accurate. Um, this information that's listed here, current and previous address. If you ever see an address that's listed for you that you've never lived at that address, that could be a red flag. And the reason that would happen is if someone had found your social security number and date of birth, those are the only two things that anyone needs to apply for a credit card, particularly credit cards. Getting a home loan, it's, I would say, not impossible, but it would be a lot more difficult because when we are getting a home loan or a car loan, the lenders do a little bit more investigation. As opposed to credit cards, especially these days, we can get a credit card online and they don't know who's on the other side. So someone can go in with my social security and my date of birth and then put their own address and get a credit card. So that would be a red flag. We want to make sure that everything that's in our credit reports do belong to us. Right? So let's continue on with inquiries. Ms. Hazel, you wanna like to?
Okay, so we're going to a regular inquiry. Inquiries authorized and initiated on your behalf. Sometimes when you go in for credit, they will say, I need to run your credit report. And sometimes it will cost you to do that. Or sometimes you don't want anybody to run your credit report too many times because it will affect your credit score. But when you know that you're going for a house or a car, then that's something they have to do. But at the same time, just applying for different things, like you go into the store and they say, oh, we're going to give you 20% off if on your purchase date. A lot of times it's not good to open up those different accounts everywhere, because every time they open an account, it will take a hit on your credit sometimes. So I would say be careful about that. That's what I guess promotional inquiries is mostly time. These inquiries are initiated by the company who want to make a firm offer of credit or insurance.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a lot of promotional stuff out there.
Mm-hmm. That's why we keep on getting those mails in the those envelopes in the mail from different lenders, from different banks, that they say, oh, you're approved for this much, you're approved for that much. Some of them are just junk mail, but usually when they do come from banks, they have actually looked at our credit score. They have run our credit and they feel like, oh, this is a person that we would want to give a loan to, and those do not affect ours. And then the banks or the financial institutions that we already have an account with, they have the absolute authority to review our credit score at any time that they want, and that's called the account review inquiries. The promotional and the account review inquiries does not affect our credit score because we did not authorize them. But then every time we apply for a loan, mainly for a loan, that is when we get a one regular inquiry. There's also another inquiry that a landlord would do. Those are also called a soft inquiry that they do not affect because we are not looking for a loan. Or like when we try to get a cell phone, that would be another type of inquiry that happens in the also. Nathan, would you please stay? Don't drop ahead of us, please. Thank you. In the chat, we'll talk about credit cards, and we are not at the credit cards yet. So hang on there, please. I know you're anxious to learn all this stuff, but please hang in there. All right.
They're responding to Hazel's question about how many credit cards.
Oh, okay, sorry. All right. So I think we talked about a little bit about monitoring our credit records and credit scores. And okay, should we dive into credit score?
Monitoring your credit record?
Well, we did that. We talked about in the past, before we had Credit Karma, and now all of the the three agencies allow us to look at it. It was because they wanted to charge us to see the credit score and also credit report. The government had passed a rule that they were supposed to provide at least once a year, allow the users one free credit report once a year. But this was, I think, probably this changed about 2008 or so after the crash. So now we can look at our credit report and credit scores on a regular basis.
Yeah, because some credit cards now, or what you borrow from, that is one of the things that they do is say, okay, we'll let you look at your credit score every time. So that's something they are doing now too. Okay.
All right, so let's go see how this infamous credit score is actually calculated. So what's in it? All right, so Ms. Hazel?
Okay, a credit score, what we've talked about, is a number that lenders use to help them decide if they want to give this person a loan or a credit card. How likely is it that I will get paid back on time? Because that's what they want to know. How reliable are you? Will you pay me? Okay. Who's looking at your FICA? That's what they call the credit score. It's called FICA. Who's looking at it? Lenders, merchants, landlords, employers, insurers. I think we kind of covered that earlier, that all of those people are looking at your score because they want to know whether they will get their money. Higher FICA scores mean faster loan approval, fair credit decision, lower interest rate. I would say faster loan approval, and sometimes you can get a lower interest rate, a better interest rate, because that's the one thing that you always want to look at when you're applying for a credit card, is that what kind of interest rate are you going to be paying? Because there are a lot of times that they will give people credit cards now, but they charge them 25 and 30% in interest, which is not a good thing. So you want to try to get the lowest interest rate you possibly can. So you want to make sure you do that. What is the, I got a question.
Let's answer the question. So Moshnan asked, what's the best way to find our credit score? Nathan, thank you. Yes, Experian, free credit report. I have not used that one, or Credit Karma. These days, any of those three agencies, they do allow you to create an account there. So you can look at your report and also credit score. And they are free. They used to charge, but now they're all free. And also credit score, often your bank account, where you have a bank, they are offering. I know Discover does that, B of A does that. Anybody has an account with Chase or?
Well, I know Discover will do it. I don't know about the others, and I'm sure they will, but I'm not sure about them. Okay. I know Discover will.
But those are the general places where we can get a free score, credit score. Okay. And we will log into a Credit Karma account so we can see what it actually looks like. All right.
Okay, so these are the breakdown of what they are looking at when they get your information. Payment history, as we talked before, paying your bills on time, amount owed. Sometimes we have several credit cards and we owe a lot of money, so they look at that, maybe that you have too much credit. too many too many credit cards of your credit history. Like I said, from the first time that you open up an account, they are recording that history up until that time. New credit, type of credit in use. So all of those are things that those credit companies will look at. But as Alex said, sometimes they may be a little bit different. They may not be exactly the same, but those are the things that they are looking at in terms of deciding your credit score.
So there is often question about how many credit cards should we have, and I know there were a couple of posts in the chat that a few, so many or not. Having too many credit cards, if you understand the system, how the system works, it really does not hurt you. It could work against you, or it could work for your benefit. The way I usually like to present credit cards is that they're like a car. We have many cars today on the road. They can do 135. Their speedometer goes up to 135, 150, or even 160. The car can handle that kind of speed because that's what it's designed for. However, the driver, if they like to go that fast, they need to be trained. It's not the regular training that we get through driving school or so. You can really enjoy credit cards, having many of them, more than 3 or 5. There's really no limit. But we have to be on top of, if we decide to utilize our credit cards for the best way, you have to be really in control. So for most people, yes, having only 1 or 2 credit cards, that is sufficient. They should not have any more. But then there are people who understand how the system works, and more than that, have the really discipline of using their credit card for their personal benefit. Then they can actually get a lot of return from the credit cards and not be taken by the credit card. So we really have to be careful in here. Just kind of a little review that the payment history, as we talked about, this is our punctuality character. Even if we are not punctual in the rest of our aspects of our life, we have to be punctual with our payment history. It has to be. That's like the most important thing. The amount owed, it's not about how many credit cards we have or what is the total amount that we owe. It's a percentage. It's a relationship between our limits, total limit, as opposed to how much we spend. And this basically goes on our credit cards again, as we will see, because credit cards are the one that people can go crazy. When we have, go ahead, Hazel.
Okay. As Alex said, you have to have discipline in terms of dealing with credit cards. But I would caution anyone who have several credit cards and they're only able to pay the very minimum on all of them, then that's a problem, as far as I'm concerned. If you know that you cannot pay only the minimum and you got 5 or 6 credit cards and you just getting by, then I would say pay one off at a time. The lowest one, I would say, pay them off, pay one off at a time, because you're not disciplined enough to have that many credit cards. That's just my take on it.
Yeah. Actually, I take it a little even further. If anybody pays interest or any fee on their credit cards, then they should not have a credit card. That's been the guidelines that our family has lived by and has really served us well. I usually don't like to talk about personal stuff, but since you're going to be seeing my credit history, score, 6 years that we have lived, my wife and I, and the children have lived here in U.S., we have never paid any fee or any interest for our credit cards. And as you will see, even now we have a high balance, but still we're not paying any fees or interest. Muskan has a question. If I call 3 agencies, my credit score is not getting lower. No. Remember, only when we give our social security to, let's say, a bank, when we want to buy a car, a house, or whatever we do, that is the only time that our credit score is affected. Otherwise, we can check our own credit score as many times as we want. I log into Credit Karma, not every week, but at least once a month, just to see what's happening in there. And it is most of the news services, they actually send you notifications when your credit is changing. So no, your score will not change. Hazel, are you still with us? Your picture is
I'm still there. I'm
oh,
still here.
your picture went frozen, so I wasn't sure if you're.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh, I
that's
don't
okay.
know.
All right, let's see what else.
I'm still here. I don't know about that.
Okay,
Okay.
that's all right. So do you want to talk about the score? This used to be 4. I need to really update this. These are some of the reasons that whenever we used to pull our credit score, it would tell us the top reasons, sometimes 4, sometimes 6 or 7. What are the reasons as why our credit score is not higher? And these would be some of the typical ones. Of course, whenever we are delinquent, we don't pay. That has a effect. Derogatory is the same thing. When our sometimes when we borrow something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be even money. We were working with someone who had borrowed a medical device after a surgery, and she just didn't return it. And after many years, when she was in our class and we looked at her credit report, she says, "Oh, I still have this thing." And that device, the price of that device had gone to collection, because if a hospital loans you something, a device that's necessary for your health, they would like to have it back. They don't want you to hold on to it. And when they cannot retrieve that, then they send to collection. Those are all about delinquency. Let's see, number of accounts, that same thing. Amount owed on the accounts, we will see how that goes. Let's see, portion of balance to credit limit. We will talk a little bit more about this. Length of time that this account been established. Every time when we open up a new account and we get a new loan, whether it's a credit card, a house loan, a car loan, the system sees it as a new one and says, all right, I need this person to make at least 6 months of payments to make sure that this person is accountable, is staying on top of the payment. So initially it drops a little bit, but then after 6 months it comes up. I think Mojgan had a question earlier about when we close our accounts. It's the same way. When we close an account, it can happen in two ways. One is that we call a credit card company and say, I don't want this account anymore. I've already paid it off. So they will close it for you. That is reflected in your credit report. It says who actually did the request to close. As long as it's the user that requests that closure, then we're okay. But if a bank closes an account, a credit card account, that could have some negative effect, because then they're saying that why did the bank close this person's account? So we have to be careful on that. Let's see, length of history. Also, I think Hazel mentioned, we always want to keep the very first credit card that we ever obtain, because that helps us keep our credit history up. Our credit history is an average of from the very first time when we got a credit card or whatever the first loan we got up to now. So they do average all of those to show what it is. So we want to make sure that we keep one, even if we don't use it all the time, every 6 months or so, just to make a small transaction on it, a small purchase, and then
Pay it off.
then pay it off, exactly, and then hang on to it. And then also they are looking at the regular inquiries. They stay on our account for 2 years. So anytime we request a loan from somewhere, even if we don't get it, that inquiry will stay on our credit report for 24 months, for 2 years. So they want to make sure that you're not looking around for too many loans. So for example, and there are exceptions to it. When we are buying a house, they know that the system understands that we are going around and shopping from different lenders. So they allow, I think it's a 30-day period, they allow that even if you go around, you shouldn't, but if you go around to 10 different banks and ask them to check your credit for a possible home loan, it will show at 10, but then it will count it as 1. However, if you just go on the internet and go on a shopping spree for credit cards and apply for 10 credit cards, each one of those will count as 1 inquiry, which is extremely bad. So we really want to be careful how and when we go request, try to open up a new account. Okay. Let's see, there was one thing else. All right, so let's also talk about, I think we skipped that in the beginning, and I know it was a question. How do we start? Ms. Hazel, maybe we can go back to that one. So we said we start small. What do we mean by that? If it's a young person who doesn't have any credit?
Well, for me, for something simple, might be just a store that you go to and you buy your clothes a lot. So you might want to start with that. Um, and just open that up and then just pay it off as you go. Every time you buy something, maybe one thing, just pay that off. But don't go and open up high, a lot of credit. Just start simple with, I don't know now where young people go, but a lot of times the Gap or different places, I don't really know exactly, but you might want to start with something simple and just pay it off as you go.
Yeah. So let's say, so this is a question. Moshgan says, my son wants to start credit. Should I have him under my credit card? I believe Asha is 20, if I'm not mistaken. So when is Ms. Hazel, when do young people can apply for their own credit? Is there a particular age?
I would think, I'm not sure but you can carry them as a second authorized user, and supposedly that will increase their credit score for a while. But I'm not sure about the age. I would think, for me personally, I wouldn't let my child start credit until they had a small job and they could actually pay for something themselves. But I have heard of people who will put their child on as an authorized user. But I would say that until that child has a job where he can contribute, I would not do it personally. But it's up to each individual. But I would say let them start out. It might be gas, and if they are of the age and they're driving, maybe they could start with a gas card, you know, gas card. But I would say that don't just run it up and don't be giving your friends no gas on your credit card. But that's a personal thing for me. But I would say something like that, where you're going to get some gas and you're going to pay it off.
So there's several ways that we can start. One is, as Ms. Hazel said, you can put anyone. Most credit card companies allow for any of us to add just a user, authorized user, to our existing account with a name and a date of birth. Most of them, they don't even require a social security number. So that way, on your account, is you authorize an additional card user. A lot of them do allow you to set a limit if you want. So that is, but that when you add someone as an authorized user, that does not help the child's credit actually, because it's just an authorized user. The second way to do it is to add your child, of course not child, maybe youth, maybe in age 15 or so, you can add them as a co-borrower. So by giving the credit card company their social security number. So once they take social security and add it to the system, now both you as a parent and the child become responsible for the account. And whatever history you have with that particular account, it will be shared with your youth, with your child. So for example, this is what we did for our boys. We have a Discover card that we've had it for 20 years now. So as they were growing up in teenage years, we added them to the Discover card. Now we could not see their credit score until they actually became 18. But once we were able to see that, now we saw that they also have 20 years worth of credit history, even though that they were not 20 years themselves. But that's how the system works. Then at age 18, that is when any individual can legally actually go apply for a credit card. But then that is based on if someone goes, let's say if my child I had not have him on my credit card, and he would have tried to get a credit card, he would be immediately rejected because he had no credit history, basically nothing under his name. But by the fact that we added him to that credit card, that boosted his credit score a little bit. And usually, from what I have seen, people that just without having any kind of, with just one credit card, their credit score is about 735. If you have nothing, then the system says NA, it does not even exist. Another way of doing this is for someone, if no one wants to add them to their account, there's also called a secured account. So anyone can go to a bank and put in, let's say, $500 in a savings account that is under their name, under the person's name, and then ask the bank for a secured credit card. So what the bank does, they put a hold on that $500 in a savings account that belongs to the person, and then they would give you a credit card with $500 in limit. So this way, the financial institution knows that if you spend and you cannot pay it back, they always have a way of going and deducting your balance from the savings. That's the other way too. So those are several ways that our young ones can start with a credit card. But as Ms. Hazel said, credit cards are not something that we just hand out to our children or to our youth. It's really something that they need to be educated on. And also they need to really, their hands needs to be held for some time until they understand how the system works and what are the pitfalls of credit cards. Because as we will see in the next, if we have time in the next slide, credit cards can be our best friends or they can be our worst enemies. So many families have fallen apart because of credit card debts and just debt in general. It's so easy to get sucked in by credit cards that it's unbelievable. But then on the opposite side, if we learn how to use it, there's a lot of benefit and almost necessary to have credit cards in our society. All right.
So Alex, could I add something here?
Absolutely.
So this is true in the States, I would believe. It's definitely true here in Southern California that when a child, quote unquote, turns 18, the banks immediately send them out applications for credit cards. So it's very important that they are taught about how to be responsible for credit cards because they can get multiple offers just automatically by becoming a legal age.
Yeah,
and that is a way to for them to establish their own credit is to use it responsibly, as Hazel has said, to start out small, make a purchase, make sure you pay off the complete amount so you don't pay the very high interest rate that comes along with a credit card.
And let me just add something. I think they finally stopped the credit card companies from being on college campuses because a lot of young people got in trouble. I have a niece who she left college. She owes about $40,000 in credit cards. It's easy to get in debt, but it's hard to get out. But I think they've stopped them from being at college campuses now. But yes, you have to be very disciplined and you have to have talked to your children about the fact of how to use it. And I caution parents sometimes to be very careful about unless their children have a job, because otherwise you're responsible. Just like you have a pet, you're responsible for anything that pet does. So you just have to be very careful and disciplined. But I think somebody said in chat that their child was 20 years old. So that's a very responsible age in terms of teaching them what to do.
It is, and again, yes, we have to be very cautious, but it is something that sooner or later we need to understand and we need to learn how to use. So we've done the same thing with our boys. When we gave them credit cards, they had we add them to our credit card. They had low limits, so they could not go spend. Every month, we would sit together and look at all the transactions We made sure that they keep their receipts. That's another important aspect, not only for our credit cards, but also for our bank accounts, to make sure that at the end of the month, there is nothing, there is no transaction that does not belong to us, which is happens very often. It's like many times, a perfect example, once I think we signed the boys for a summer camp and the fee was 90, but then we were charged 180. So when we called the company to say, why is that? They said, oh, at the bottom, there was a fine print that said, you're also signing up for this. And I said, no, that's a fine print. We did not want. So please take that off. And they immediately removed it. It's very unfortunate that our society, at least here in the US, runs on people's ignorance. Financial institutions, not just them, but a lot of them, they bank on people not paying their payments on time, not paying in full amount, not paying attention to what's on their statements. It's really, and they're not doing anything illegal, but they are really benefiting from people's lack of awareness or paying attention. We are, especially now, we're so busy in our social media, we're so much more worried about what posts are coming into Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or whatever, and not paying attention to our personal finances. And that's how companies are benefiting from it. They're not lying to us, but they're deceiving us that everything is okay, everything, and it's really our responsibility. So when you are ready to give your children credit cards, at least for 1 year, you would have to hold their hands. I mean, I'm talking about little younger ones. Maybe Asha is old enough to do this at age 20. But if you're going to start your children on credit cards, you have to work with them. And as Ms. Hazel mentioned, now these days, credit card companies cannot come on campus, but they can still be across from the campus. So if your youth is going to college, you have to warn them that just because there's a store in front of the, well, these days we don't even go to college anymore. We're just doing everything virtual. But if they go to campus and they see a company bank across the street from them handing out pizza, t-shirts, this is how they would lure people in, young people in, that they should not just go sign up, because it is very dangerous to do this. So we're getting
easy to get in debt, but it's hard to get out.
Yes, yeah. So let's go. I think we have a few minutes. If you have any questions so far about all of these, put it in the chat. I will also stay after the session because I know there's a lot of information that we are sharing. So if anyone has additional questions, we can either do it through WhatsApp, or I don't mind staying here today for a little bit more. Let's review some stuff about, we did a credit score. Let's look at credit card. Oh, that's taxes. Credit cards are here. So our credit cards, as I said, you have to watch out for the devil. We can abuse. Our friends can say, oh, it's an emergency. Can you pay for me? That is not necessarily an emergency. High interest rates. I know there was some information in the chat to have low interest rates. Actually, whenever I personally get a credit card, they can be charging 30–40% on interest. It really does not matter because I have learned how to not pay interest. Again, this is not for everyone, but hopefully we all get to a point that we don't even care how much interest rate they're charging because we are not using it. Can work against our credit rating, but let's look at meet your new friend. If you are into travel, it's almost required that you have to have a credit card. I don't think airlines or other places, you can use your debit card. But for example, if you need to rent a car, I don't think anybody can rent a car with a debit card. You have to have a credit card with it. Rewards are my best friends. That's why our family puts everything, even a $2 purchase, on credit cards, because we collect rewards. There are so many different types of rewards that can be done on purchases, discounts, so much, so we cannot really cover all of that in there. But again, if anybody has more questions about rewards and credit cards, definitely we'll be more than happy to help.
I just want to add one thing. I'm talking about rewards. When you're thinking about a credit card, you have to decide what is beneficial to you. What is it that you're looking for? If some people like uh, 1%, 2%, 3%, depending on what they buy. Some people like travel rewards. Some people like uh, you can get cards depending on how much you spend. You can, so I have a credit card where they pay me every 3 months. So it just depends on what it is that you're looking that will benefit you. So I would say that to anybody. Look for the card that you want to use and what will be beneficial to you.
And also don't be deceived by the ads that you see on TV or other stuff. Sometimes those ads again can be deceiving. For example, what these days most of the credit card companies give like 1.5% either in rewards or points or cashback. But I know there is one that gives 2%. Well, yes, it looks like it's giving you more, but then you have to see how much of that 2% you need to use in comparison to the other cards. So that's why we put in here independent investigation of truth. You really have to dig deep into it. It really pays off. There is a question from Mojgan. Can we ask credit card to change our credit to rewards one? I don't think they will change the same card. Usually banks have different types of cards. So they might have a Visa that's called Ink or this or that, and each one of them has a different way of calculating the rewards. If you wanted to do that, you would have to ask them to close one and then open up a new one. So I think that is, but I don't believe they will just change it because they have different credit cards for every different types of rewards. Let's see. All right, so those are on the rewards again, and there are many places where you can compare rewards, like creditcards.com. That's one place that you can go in and look at different cards based on their annual fee, their rewards that they give. Make sure you get what you really want. Let's see. Selecting, if we looked at the fee schedules, rewards, and then all of that. Keep a close eye. You have to keep a registry. I know at least one person we were working with, she said, every time I make a purchase on my credit card, I put that cash in an envelope. Or I have a different bank account where I transfer that expenditure from my checking into the other account to make sure that at the end of the month, I have enough money to pay for it. There are so many different ways of doing this. There is no one way. As long as you do not, spend more than what you can pay. Credit cards are a replacement for checks or for cash or for debit cards. They should never be looked at as a source of income. Pay the balance in full every month. That is, again, my ideology, our ideology. We've always done based on that. When it's time to stop using credit cards, first one, you pay interest for your personal expenses on any credit card. Then you should not be really using the credit cards. So there is a lot more. We only have 3 minutes left. Let me just quickly give your assignment for Monday's class. And then again, I'll be more than happy to stay on a little longer if there are any questions. So Monday's session is about thankfulness and respect. And I will put these into the group chat also. Thankfulness. So here we will be learning about how to become thankful for our countless blessings and not complain too much at all times. There are videos that I will also share in the group chat. We basically write down what is it I'm thankful for. Is that item something that's necessary? It's basically concept of needs versus wants. And then some things that absolutely are unnecessary too. That is the only activity for here. There's something in the workbook. We'll look at it on Monday. Then respect is a continuation of that. Learning what we respect and how I truly show my respect. Often we say that we respect something, our environment, but then we throw so much trash out there. Then getting into really becoming aware of what is it that we're wasting. Often we don't think about things that we buy and don't necessarily use or don't even buy, just grab and then we throw it without using it, or maybe use it one time and then we throw it into trash. So just because we did not pay any money for it, it does not mean that it's our right to pollute our society and just use resources beyond being wasteful in our use of resources. So those are the assignments for Monday. And I'm going to stop here and see if anybody has any questions, particularly about the credit. Ms. Hazel, Barry, if you guys have any additional thoughts or anything about credit,
No.
I know we went through it very quickly.
No, it's fine. I just, I have the greatest respect for credit and credit cards. But my main thing is that you have to be disciplined in terms of your use. And like you said before, they can be your best friend if you know how to use them. So that's it.
Okay. That's the end of session for today. Thank you so much all for coming. Have a great weekend. If you haven't completed your assignments from the previous days, please make sure you do that. Those assignments are very important. Have a good one.